What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Josh Levine. We got a treat for you today. I'm really happy with the way this interview came out. I think this one, is really exciting. I think we got a bunch of great lessons that we can all use, and it's also really entertaining. My man, Steve Hofstetter, is a super talented comedian. Really funny dude. He's the host of the Fox TV show Laughs. He kills it on social media with videos of his comedy, especially the series he has where he just takes out hecklers. People heckle him in the middle of a show, and he pretty much destroys them. He's also a dude who seems to get mistaken for Edward Snowden from time to time. We talk a lot about the heckler thing in our interview. Really, I think it's a good metaphor for haters or just obstacles in general, things that stand in the way of you achieving your goals. And kind of, he tells us how he really, although he makes a big thing of it on social, right? His focus is really on the crowd, on making sure that they have a good time, rather than destroying this one individual that's standing in his way. And I just think that's such a great lesson, like I said, that we all can learn from. He also talks about how he tailors his set. He kind of reads the room before he goes out on stage, and he tailors it real time to match the energy of the room. Great stuff coming up with Steve Hofstetter. But first, let's listen to the EDM.com track of the week. Yo, that was Control with a track called Lunatic, our EDM.com track of the week. Get over to EDM.com after you listen to this interview with Steve Hofstetter. Thanks for being here, man. You're a funny dude. I've been enjoying your stuff on YouTube.
Thanks.
And I think Clint Schaff connected us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Clint's become my conduit to all kind of cool shit that I didn't know about.
Yeah, I've known him way too long.
Is that right?
I've known him coming up to 20 years now.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, I think we're around 17, 18 years.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clint's a good dude. He sat in on an interview and just watched. I don't know why he wanted to do that, but
he likes learning stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. So anyway, I've been enjoying your stuff, and I'm curious to kind of just learn how you got to all of this.
Yeah.
So tell me about your first. Do you remember?
Are we starting?
Yeah, we're
all right.
Yeah.
It's live. All right, cool. I don't know. We've been hanging for a little while,
Sometimes we end up using some of that stuff, not to like trick anyone, but like just fun things come out.
Yeah.
Whatever. I had an interview lately where I thought I wasn't going to use any of it, and then I was like, fuck, this is all just like, it's funnier than like the stuff I had planned.
Yeah.
Not that we necessarily try to be funny, but so tell me about.
I certainly haven't tried yet. So
how's what's the first comedy you remember? Is there a comedian that like turned you on at the beginning?
I ever saw?
Yeah.
Well, my dad used to play me old comedy albums.
Yeah.
So I grew up listening to, it's funny, the only one that I really liked, so I liked Carlin and I liked Dick Gregory.
Okay.
And the ones that I didn't like, that he liked, Cosby, I actually have never been a fan of.
Is that right?
Yeah. I always thought it was just so easy. And even at like 7, I was like, ugh, it's so derivative.
Really?
Yeah, I just found it to be so generic.
Yeah.
And I feel vindicated.
Yeah, sure.
And then also Jose Jimenez, Bill Dana.
You didn't like that?
Nah, I mean, even as a kid, I was like, this is racist.
Yeah. Sure.
But it's a different generation.
Yeah.
I understand why it worked at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved Carlin, and I loved Dick Gregory. And then the first thing that really stood out to me, I think I was like 11 or 12, and I was in a barbershop reading a copy of, I think it was like Rolling Stone was the article. But I was reading a magazine in a barbershop, and they had a profile on Bill Hicks. And I still remember the jokes from that article. That was the turning point for me, where I was just like, this is the kind of comedy I'm looking for.
Yeah.
As
And
a kid.
were you thinking? Well, what was the first show you saw live?
First show I saw live was at Stand Up New York. I went to Columbia undergrad.
Yeah.
And they used to call us up all the time and just be like, hey, your fraternity has won 30 free tickets. Be like, really? We won 30 yesterday also. Just, they had this telemarketing campaign going on in New York. So, you know what? Actually, sorry, I'm wrong about that. I forgot the first one I saw was an amateur night.
Oh, yeah?
I was a freshman. We were walking around Times Square. It was one of those things we don't know what we want to do today, so let's just walk around Times Square and find something stupid to do.
Yeah.
And they were passing out flyers. They were like barking people in, and we went into this amateur night. And like some of them were very funny, and some of them were fucking terrible. But
That's crazy.
that actually is one of the things that made me. I had written a bunch of jokes when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because my brother was doing that, and I liked watching stand-up on TV. But that was the first time that I was like, I'm gonna write a set and do an amateur night.
Really?
And, yeah, and I wrote a bunch of jokes down and still didn't do it for 3 years after that.
Yeah. So you weren't thinking that this was a career.
No, not at
that
all.
point.
I started doing improv when I was 13 to impress a girl.
Yeah.
Didn't work. But I loved it. I loved improv very much. And I'm actually, I just finished the hopefully final draft of a book I have coming out in March, where it's basically about high school and about how I sucked and comedy was kind of my way out. Like I found comedy as my voice and how to,
Yeah.
I guess
suck not at comedy.
I sucked at
Just
everything.
yeah.
I sucked at life.
Yeah.
I sucked at a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I found comedy as kind of the way out. But I had never intended to be a comic. I just thought this is something fun to do, and this is, a way to express myself.
What did you think your career was going to be?
I was going to be a sports writer.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved writing. I still love
kinda are.
writing.
I mean, I know you do a lot in
I
sports
still
and-
do some stuff with it.
Yeah.
I'm roasting Pete Rose on
really?
On the 10th.
Ah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I have so many. Oh, he's gonna hate me so much.
I'm sure.
It's great.
Have you done roasts before?
I've written for roasts before.
Yeah.
I've never done one.
Uh-huh.
But actually, just yesterday, I wrote for one, for a sports one. Arian Foster.
Uh-huh.
So he was roasting. Oh God, who was it? Wade Davis, I think, or I forget who. One of the other Texans.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to know him through comedy. He's a big fan of comedy, and so I worked on his stuff with him, and that was fun.
So I've asked this to other comedians that have been on the show, but how is writing for someone else different from writing for yourself?
You can't write in your delivery. You can't write in your voice.
Yeah.
You have to write, I guess, weird to say, you have to write almost more generically. You have to write jokes that don't rely on delivery. And you have to, it's, with someone like Arian, he's not a comic. He's very funny, but he's not a comic. So it's a little different. If you're writing for another comic, though, you're writing in their voice.
Right.
You're doing what you can. And it's similar to writing fiction, though. It's similar to writing a script because you're writing in a character. And so you have to know your characters really well when you write a screenplay or when you write a TV show. And so it's similar to that.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier about being in school. And so how do you know at that age that you suck?
I didn't know that I sucked at that age. I thought that life sucked.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I didn't realize it was my fault.
Yeah. And it wasn't your fault.
It was partly. I was.
Of course.
I was desperate. I was trying too hard.
Yeah.
And my publisher wouldn't let me call it this because they thought it was very insensitive. But I wanted to call my book "It May or May Not Get Better." Because the premise is it doesn't automatically get better. It gets better if you don't wallow in your own shit, and if you don't, if you find what you're good at, you stay in your lane, and opportunity increases. Bullies take on different forms.
Yeah.
There's a chance for it to get better, but it only gets better if you put the work in.
How'd you learn that?
Through a lot of trial and error, and by putting the work in.
Yeah.
And by self-analyzing a lot. I memean, that's what it takes to be a comic. You have to constantly self-analyze. That's why it's always funny to me when someone's doing comedy and they're delusional, because I'm like, how do you analyze the world when you don't even know yourself?
delusional in the sense of like they just think they're hilarious and like other people don't get it, or?
That's one delusion.
Okay.
I have a theory that we exist in the world as the sum total of how everyone else sees us.
Okay.
So what we do, our actions, the way we speak, the way we dress, that contributes to how people see us, but how we see ourselves does not change how other people see us. So the chasm between how we see ourselves and how other people see us, that is delusion.
Yeah.
And the smaller that chasm is, the more well-adjusted of a person you're going to be. And that's true on stage as well, because how the crowd sees you is who you are on stage.
Well, that's part of why I love comedy, and especially like for this show that's supposed to kind of be about business and other stuff. That like what I mean is like comedy it's a metaphor for the rest of life and business, except that you get feedback instantly and you get it honestly, right? And not always, but let's say on the whole, right? That you know, if you're paying attention, you should know how you did that night, you know, while it's happening, immediately after. And
you should also know how that crowd is in relation to another crowd.
Sure.
Like, I did a show the other day, one of the weirder shows I've done, because half the crowd, or not half the crowd, it's about 30 people in a very small room. It's like 30 seats, but it's 30 people. Now, 6 or 7 of them were a bachelorette party, and they were just abhorrent people. Just everything was about them. They didn't know how to shut up. You know, everything that could go wrong with a bachelorette party is like, that's them. They're, you know, wearing stuff that's flashing, that, you know, just gross. One of these things of like, I get it, it's your special night, but other people still exist in the world.
Yeah.
And then 10 of the people were Michael Phelps and his friends.
Uh-huh.
It was so bizarre. Because we're in this, it's
literally Michael Phelps.
Yeah. Literally Michael Phelps and his friends.
Yeah.
The best Olympian of all time from any country in history.
Sure.
And a bunch of his friends. And they were very respectful and wonderful. And then the rest of the crowd, so this was in a wine bar in the Four Seasons.
Okay.
So the rest of the crowd is like very rich, very like, I always joke when I play crowds like that like, you guys don't know how to watch comedy because you usually send other people to do things for you. So like, you would normally just be like, did I have fun at the show tonight? I did? Oh, thank you so much. And so, and also they don't relate to problems the same way
of course
that other people do. Although I have a joke where in the joke, I'm flying first class in the joke, and the only reason it's important in the joke is because I'm sitting toward the front of the plane so I can see everyone who walks by me. And when I tell the joke normally, I say I'm sitting toward the front of the plane. And in that room, I was just like, I was flying first class because they were all just like, oh, yes, that's how we do it. But anyway, so that crowd, like, I could only do jokes that required not a ton of attention span, because you've got really the only good audience in the crowd is like Phelps and friends. And the bachelorettes are barely listening. At one point, 2 of them leave. They come back with a random dude in the hallway. I was like, great, this guy is going to try to talk to them. He doesn't want to be at the show. He's just trying to fuck these 2 idiots.
Right.
And so I'm doing quicker, shorter stuff. And you can't look at that room and be frustrated when a joke doesn't work.
Sure.
Because your goal in that kind of room is get out of there alive.
Right.
You know, succeed, get enough laughs.
Yeah.
You know, get a picture with Michael Phelps. I mean, that's the goal in that room. So
how do you? So you walk out on stage.
Yeah.
Or you're standing in the back watching
on the floor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So my point is, you see the room.
Yes.
And you figure out what kind of room you're in.
Yes.
What's your process? How do you then adjust the approach to match the room?
At this point, I've done it enough that it's not even really a thought process as much as it's automatic.
Yeah.
I guess the only thought process is, okay, cut the long stories. And there's one story in specific that I've been working on that's like my killer material now, but you need to pay attention from start to finish because so much of it is about the payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And the payoff at the end doesn't matter unless you get the little parts in the beginning.
Sure.
And so the thing I was thinking of is, okay, I still want to work on that, but I'm doing a half hour, so let me do 20 minutes of like shorter, easier stuff, more one-linery stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that you don't need to build on. You could just, jokes that work individually, and then once I have them enough and they trust that I'm funny, especially because the comic before me, who's very funny, hated them so much that he spent a lot of his set just being I hate you all, fuck this play, you know.
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, I gotta win them back a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's hard to pay attention to a long story when you have a dildo strapped to your head.
I think that's a good rule in life in general.
Absolutely.
What's that? Is that in Genesis?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
is that, yeah.
Yeah.
I always forget if it's in Genesis or Deuteronomy. I get them confused sometimes.
What was your first time on stage?
First time on stage was my senior year of college. First time as a stand-up on stage.
Yeah.
My senior year of college, I had gone to a party at a place called the Underground Lounge in Manhattan. It was just a bar. It was, party is like, it was my friend's birthday, and a couple of us went out, and they have like this side room where they were doing comedy, and we were like, oh, let's go see the show.
Yeah.
And so we did, and afterward I talked to one of the guys, and because I had been having this itch for a while, and so then he did what any struggling poor comedian would do, and charged me for lessons because I didn't know any better.
Sure.
And so I took, at the time I had like a whole bunch of change, like I just kept putting it into like a jar, and so I took it to a
Like
Coin
Sparklet's
Star.
bottle or some shit?
Yeah, I took it to a Coin Star, and I had $90, which was enough for three $30 sessions.
Okay.
And at the end of it, he put me on his show.
Yeah.
And I was so excited because I was like, Saturday night prime time. I didn't realize that it's just like, no, he knows I'm going to bring a bunch of friends because I go to college a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
And because I'm paying him money. So that's why.
Of course.
But the first show went well because I really prepared.
Yeah.
The second show, I did well ad-libbing how it wasn't going well. And I actually said the words out loud, and I am so ashamed of this. I actually said the words out loud, I can't bomb. Because I figured, when I'm not doing well, I have these funny off-the-cuff jokes about how I'm not doing well, and then they like me again.
Yeah.
And the third time, it was like the universe heard me say that.
Right.
I was like, I'm sorry, what now? And the third time I bombed
You get nothing.
so hard.
Wow.
So hard that I was hosting, and within a minute I got off stage.
Yeah.
Within a minute. That's bad when you know
Like you
that
gave up.
It's I gave up.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever not done my time. I just bailed, and I didn't know that was a terrible thing. I just figured that I'm hosting, you know what, I'm just going to regroup, and I'm going to think about this while the next guy's up, and I'm going to try to do better. And the first guy who went up was so mad because I just...
Sure. Yeah, you left him.
Yeah.
You left him hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was bad.
So, how do you pick yourself back up from that?
You cry a lot.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Like, did you think, I know that we're talking about a long time ago, but like, did you go, well, okay, that was it. Now what am I going to do? Because that's done. Or did you know that you were going to push through that?
If that was my first choice, if that was my first set, I don't know if I ever would have got on stage again.
Yeah.
But because I had the ghosts of good sets already, like the two that went well,
Yeah.
and I already had another set the next day, I think it was just like, oh, well, I guess I'll, this sucks and I hope it doesn't happen again. And then the fourth one I did, but it was enough of a difference that I could, in my mind, just be like, oh, I had a bad night.
Yeah.
And you thank God for that, because otherwise,
Sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have
absolutely.
been a comic.
No, I mean, these are like, I mean, everyone goes through this, right? Not exactly the same way, but to some extent, they go through this. And I think, obviously the people that succeed are the ones that find something in them to persevere.
I think that, I think the moment I finally realized I was going to be a comic, I was about 6 months in. And I was just doing it. I was doing it. I was poor.
Yeah.
I couldn't find another job.
Yeah.
and I was basically like getting paid to flyer for the shows, so I could, you know, and I would get 5 minutes on the show because I would flyer, and so I was just doing it because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And then I was playing some colleges. I was collegehumor.com's first writer.
Oh, wow.
So I got some college gigs, and they paid okay.
Yeah.
And so I was at MIT with two of my buddies, and they both went up, and the crowd sucked. That crowd was just so tight. They weren't laughing at anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not a great performance environment. We were in like an auditorium-style classroom that sat like 400 people, and there were like 30 there. The lights were up. I mean, it was everything that at the time I didn't realize that like, oh, these are problems.
Sure.
Because at the time I was just like, this is a show, you know?
Yeah.
So while they're bombing, I'm waiting to go up, and I'm sitting there going, let me at him. I'll get him. And I realized that I have been a marginal athlete my whole life. But I never wanted to be up with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. You know, I never wanted that pressure. There's that phrase, winners want the ball.
Right.
I never did.
Yeah.
Because I always wanted to be like in the on-deck circle being like, oh, you know, I could have, it's good we won, but I didn't get my shot, you know? And so that was the first time I realized that, like, I want the ball.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in myself enough that I think I can do this. And that is, we had been talking the day before about how I always referred to myself as a writer and not a comedian. And that night that happened, and in the car ride on the way back, I was like, all right, I'm a comedian now.
Yeah. Was that, was that, did you figure all that out on your own, or were there people helping you?
I mean, I would always listen to other people.
Yeah.
But it's not like anyone, you know, took me aside and was like, here's how it works, kid.
Yeah.
I did have, you know, good mentors. I, you know, call them comedy older brothers.
Who are those people?
Pete Dominic and Eddie Ift in particular. Eddie was the first person to, it was very funny. He came over to me. I'd done a set, and he came over to me. He's like, you have smart material. You have, you know, it's good writing. And which is what you say to someone who's got potential but not there yet, you know?
Yeah.
And so I start blabbering on about like, well, you know, I've always wanted to be a writer and blah, blah, blah. And Eddie just puts a hand on my shoulder and goes, shut up and take the compliment.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thank you. And we, you know, I still talk to him a lot. We still, I talked to him just the other day.
Yeah.
And then Pete Dominic actually, I was very timid in this world. I was very scared of the whole thing. And there was a comic, so I produced a show. And there was a comic named Todd Lynn, who is no longer with us. And he was, they say that if you can't say anything good about the dead, don't say anything at all. I disagree with that. I think when someone's an asshole, it's okay to talk about how they're an asshole. Them dying, I guess it means they're not going to be more of an asshole than they were, because their assholeness is complete.
Sure.
But this guy was just a horrible dude. Yeah. And he, so I was producing a show, and at the time he had like some small part on some show on UPN. This is how long ago it was. I'm
mighty
producing this
UPN.
show. I guess the precursor to the CW.
Right.
So when WB and CW merged, or when WB and UPN merged to create CW, UPN was like where the bad shows came from.
Yeah.
So he's got like this small part. He's not a big deal, but he definitely thinks he's a big deal. And so he's walking in this hallway. I'm producing the show at the dark hallway. My job is to be like, oh, you here to see the show tonight? And, you know, and I say that, and then he steps into the light, and I go, oh, Todd, sorry about that. Do you want to come in? He wasn't on the show. He had just stopped by. But I did eventually recognize him. I did say, come on, man. I was nice to him. He kept giving me shit about it. I was like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I didn't, you know, you were in a dark hallway. Like, what do you want from me?
Let it go.
Yeah. And he wouldn't let it go. So then I'm doing another show that he's on, and I have my family come to see me. And he goes up to the producer and is like, I don't want this kid on the show.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I was like crestfallen. I was like, what's wrong? You know, and the producer, who understands that like some of the tickets are sold to my family, is like, No, he's on the show.
Yeah.
And so, but he just kept giving me shit. And Pete, who's not a big guy, and Todd is a big guy, or was a big guy. Now I assume he's much smaller. So Pete steps in between us and like sticks up for me and says to Todd, like, you don't remember when you were new?
Yeah.
Why would you treat people like this? We all were new. And it was just, I didn't really know Pete at the time. I had talked to him maybe once before. And it was just such a wonderfully heroic moment. And you know, something I'll never forget. And actually, and it was great because I got a chance to both pay it forward and pay it back. Because with Pete, so I ended up with a show on Sirius Satellite Radio, and Pete was a regular on the show.
Nice.
And then from that, he got his own show. And then from that, he got a regular role. Not only does he have his own show on Sirius, still to this day, but he's also regular on CNN because of the show on Sirius. And
cool.
Which was great.
That's awesome.
And meanwhile, with Todd, I found myself opening for him. I was featuring and he was headlining in Montclair, New Jersey. And the crowd there, like, I did well with that crowd. I lived in Montclair. I knew some of those people. And so I went up. I had a great set, one of the better sets I had that year.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of material about growing up with a black sister and dealing with racism that way. And like, Montclair is a pretty affluent white crowd. And then Todd goes up and he still hates me. This is 5-6 years later. He still hates me. And he goes up and he just starts to be like, that cracker don't know a fucking thing about racism, that white motherfucker, you know.
Wow.
And meanwhile, like, most of the crowd is also crackers.
Yeah.
But they also, more importantly, they liked me. I just did well. And so he then proceeded to bomb for 45 minutes because he just went up and, like, the nice kid that they just were rooting for, he trashed, and he ate shit because of it. So
that's poetic.
Yeah, but you know, may he rest in peace.
Well, that's one of the things that I like about your comedy is that you know, you face these things head on.
Thank you.
Right, like, and I know that, you know, part of your fame online, at least, is about hecklers. Yeah. And it's something that, you know, every comedian faces, and most people, you know, it's like most people get through it, right? Better or worse, some better than others. But you've like totally embraced it, and you know, made it kind of, I think, part of what your comedy is about, right?
Well, my comedy is about, the reason it dovetails well with the heckler stuff is because I believe I am harsh, but appropriately harsh. My comedy comes from compassion.
Sure.
So I'm not mean to people who don't deserve it, but when someone deserves it, I'm fucking brutal. Yeah. And so I think, so that dovetails well with the heckler stuff because it's justice. It's, you know, it's someone trying to take the spotlight away from me. It's someone trying to take the experience away from the rest of the crowd. Yeah. And just, I mean, imagine if you went to go see, imagine if you went to go see Led Zeppelin in concert and you just started playing guitar. Mm-hmm. Like, what a fucking dick. Yeah. It's very clear that that person's a dick. Sure. So when you go see a comedian, if you just start to try to tell jokes, like, the rest of the audience is going to look at you and be like, shut up, dick. Mm-hmm. We didn't come here for this. Right. You're drowning out what we came here to see. And so I guess embracing that, I lean into it. I would rather do a show without hecklers. Of course. Yeah. But when it happens, it's a skill I'm glad I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, back to sort of comedy as a metaphor, right? I think, hecklers are bullies. Yeah. Right? And I think everybody can relate. Not everyone can relate to being on stage telling jokes, right? But everyone can relate on some level to having that experience of somebody fucking with you.
Everybody who's ever worked with another human being has wanted to turn to someone and be like, shut up, Carol. Right. Like, we all have that in us. And so...
Well, Carol's a bitch, clearly.
She's the worst. Yeah. And so when you're able to do that, by the way, there's someone listening right now named Carol. Be like, what did I do?
We have a lot of listeners named Carol, it turns out. It's really weird.
Not every Carol is bitch. Just
most of them.
Look, all right, there's a great there's a great number of Carols that are horrible people. So, but there's also a great number of everyone
Yes.
who's a horrible person. But to have someone be able to do that, like I had a clip, the clip I put up this morning wasn't really a heckler clip, but it was someone trying to take over the show. I close my shows with Q&As.
Yeah.
And to give people a chance to participate and a chance to go to toe-to-toe with me if they want.
That's cool.
In a controlled environment where
Yeah.
it's not taking away from the material. It's just like an extra little
Yeah.
here's the fun part, you can play around. And it creates a lot of great clips for my YouTube.
I'm sure.
And so this one guy, so I was like, does anyone have any questions? And he just goes, do you have the time? And so I paused for a second. He's like, oh, I'm just trying to be funny. And I was like, well, how'd that go for you?
Yeah.
And so then later on, his girlfriend asks, her question is, how do I get him to stop asking stupid questions? And I say, why are you afraid he's going to propose?
Right.
And
That's awesome.
the comments on the YouTube are like, holy shit, what did he do to make you that brutal to him? And I was like, he tried to take the spotlight, and I was showing him what attention actually feels like.
Yeah.
You know, if he wants to, if you want to do a duo act with me, that's fine.
Sure.
But if you want to just try to, I'm going to be dumb and funny, it's like,
Right.
well, let's see how this turns out for you.
Sure. And I think sometimes, like, that's part of the game for some people, right? Is to, like, sit in front and get fucked with.
Yeah.
And, I like sit in the back and just enjoy the show and, keep my mouth shut. But other people approach it differently, right?
There are people who they don't care if they're well-liked. They just care that someone has an opinion about them.
Yeah.
Which is so weird to me. I can't put myself in that brain space.
Sure.
Like, I can't put... And I get the people who are like, oh, yeah, it was fun with the back and forth, and I lost, and you got me, you know?
Yeah.
But the people who are just like, who want to be the villain,
Right.
who want to be...
Yeah.
Maybe that's the delusion. Maybe that's the, the idea. I mean, I've had people come up to me after a show where they heckled, I slaughtered them, and then they come up and they're like, wasn't that funny what we did? And I was like, we didn't do anything.
Right.
You got run over by my car.
Sure.
You weren't part of that. You jumped in front of my car and I kept driving.
Well, I imagine, though, you kind of, because of your act, because you've embraced this, right, that you've sort of also put yourself out there.
Well,
so
but no one's tried on purpose, though.
Really?
No one has.
That's surprising.
It hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
The only time, there was one thing that was close where a guy, like, I could tell he was getting a little chatty, and I just said to him, I go, hey, man, I know you're excited. This isn't what's going to happen right now.
Right.
And if I ever got the sense that anyone was doing it on purpose, I wouldn't put the clip up because I wouldn't reward that behavior.
Right.
I have had it happen where someone has brought an asshole friend that they knew was going to fuck with me.
That's funny.
Because, like, they're just like, Carol's an idiot.
Yeah.
It's always Carol. And so, there was once, like in Dallas, this clip where this woman she was so drunk and so dumb, and she just kept yelling out that, like, she loved me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, let's do it quietly then. And I was like, do you know are you familiar with my work? She's like, yeah, it's great. And I was like, well, you're in it now. Yeah. Like, you're seeing it happen live. And not from the end you're going to want to see it happen. But I like talking to them and I really got the sense that they were fans and they brought this one idiot.
Yeah, sure.
Because they knew she was going to be that.
Yeah.
We all know someone like that.
Yeah, sure.
Like, if someone were to say to me, we're going to have a contest where can you bring the most belligerent audience member without them knowing they're supposed to be belligerent? Yeah. And I would be like, oh, yeah, I know exactly who to bring.
Yeah.
We all have that.
So, okay, thinking about this and your approach to hecklers, right? What can the rest of us learn about obstacles to our success?
Interesting. First of all, don't get angry. If I was angry on stage, I wouldn't win because it would get to me. Yeah. The thing that I do, and this is a very non-specific thing, but the principle of it to me is if someone's running at you to fight you and you throw a punch, you're going to hurt your hand. Mm-hmm. But if you step aside and let them fall, you are untouched and they are injured.
You're a ninja.
So basically, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to let their own weight carry them down. And so the other thing is try to understand where it's coming from. When there was a guy who kept yelling out all these, I hate cliche, I hate, like, not cliche, but sentences that have no meaning. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us how you really
Testifying.
feel.
Right.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel is one of the ones that I hate the most. Because it's like, that is exactly what I was doing. So what you're saying when you say tell us how you really feel is, you have an opinion about this, and it's a strong opinion, and I don't have strong opinions about things, so this is making me uncomfortable.
Right.
So just if you're uncomfortable, just keep your mouth shut.
Sure.
So this one guy did both of those, and instead of just being like, you fucking dumbass, what I did is I was like, what did you want the reaction to be when you said that? What was the goal here? And then they have to sit back, but what the goal? I didn't know, and then they look much dumber.
Yeah.
So if someone is, being an asshole at work, for me, it's not about confrontation. It's not about head to head. It's about give them enough rope to let them hang themselves. Because what it really is with the crowd is the crowd needs to hate them more than I do.
Yeah.
Once the crowd hates them more than I do, I can say anything I want and get away with it.
Sure.
I once told a woman that I hoped her husband left her and she died alone. And the crowd applauded because they were like, well, that's the nicest thing I thought. I thought way worse.
Sure.
And so similarly in life, I think, is if someone's being an asshole, let them be an asshole publicly. Get everyone else on your side before you verbally hit back.
I mean, I think that's so interesting because it speaks to, like, watching your comedy. I don't know that someone would say, oh, that guy's exercising restraint right now, right? but clearly you are, because you could just yell, you could be a Michael Richards, right? And just,
absolutely,
yell horrible things at people that are completely not related to making the rest of the crowd laugh, right?
And usually I'll let them get away with something once, so that when I go back in on them, I'm like, enough already.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll say something like, I'll hear them say something and I'll brush it off. I'll go, I know what you said, but it was probably stupid. And then I just move back on. And if the crowd sees me as trying to defend them, as doing what I can to save the show, then they are appreciative of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is fun. I think the untrained eye would look at it and just be like, yeah, he doesn't show restraint at all. And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, of course.
But it actually is, I show temporary restraint until there's enough, and then I can swing.
Well, and I think what you're saying is that regardless of what one person is saying, your focus is on the crowd.
Yes.
Right? It's not on that person. And I think for comedians or anyone in a similar situation who makes it about that person, you lose.
Yes. When I'm up there, like, look, whether someone heckles or they don't, check's gonna clear.
Yeah.
I'm already paid. My night is already fine.
Yeah.
However, the people who paid $20 for that ticket, their night depends on whether or not the show goes well. And so, and add that up, 200-300 people who are all depending on me to make their night go well. I don't want to let them down. Simple as that.
Yeah. So when you do the Q&A, and obviously it sounds like there's an element of freestyle to your comedy. How do you balance, what's pre-prepared and what's freestyle?
You give yourself permission to go off script at all times. When I was I just did a show in Berlin, and whenever I could, I took the existing material and made a Holocaust reference. Like, whenever I could. I'm a Jewish comic in Berlin.
Sure.
I mean, I opened the show by saying, like, I landed at the airport, and I was like, first of all, I'm sitting there going, oh, it's so nice to be here in a progressive country with an intelligent leader that welcomes Jews. And I was like, what happened? And then I get on the train from the airport and I'm like, now I'm a Jew on a train in Berlin excited about it. And so it just, it sets the tone for, if you do that up front especially, then people don't think everything is prepared. And so when you do the prepared material, you're telling a story, it just looks like you're telling a story.
Yeah.
And it creates the illusion of spontaneity. That's so much what stand-up comedy is. It's creating the illusion of spontaneity every single time. And so the more you can have little asides, going to the crowd, etc., the more that illusion becomes reality. Like when I do a show before the Q&A, regardless of the Q&A, if I'm just doing a show from start to finish, just working on my material, in an hour-long set, I maybe do 3 minutes off the cuff. And constantly people will say like, so is that like 50-50 planned and not, because it just, you make it look that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's another metaphor for the rest of life, right? Like you kind of have your plan, but if people feel like it's a plan,
yes,
then you're not going to win them over.
Well, and also giving yourself permission to deviate from the plan.
Yeah. That seems really hard for people to do, probably myself included, if I think about it.
It is a very hard thing to do. First of all, having a plan is important.
Sure.
Having a plan is very important. One of the, business-wise, when it comes to comedy, one of the things I talk to other comics about is the idea of road mapping. And the idea of like when you give directions to somebody, we're sitting here in West Hollywood, all right? And if we were to say, how do you get to the valley from here?
Right.
You could say, well, go north.
Yeah.
Or you could say, take Fairfax. When you're on Fairfax, take a left on Sunset.
Yeah.
Then you get to Laurel, and then you take that up. Like, having specific direction is very important. And a lot of people don't do that when it comes to their career. They just, and comedians as well, they'll be like, I want to play more colleges this year. I'm like, okay, how many? I don't know, 5 more? Be like, okay, how many colleges do you have to reach out to before one of them says yes? Usually it's like 1 in 20. Be like, okay, so you don't want to play more colleges this year, you want to contact 100 of them.
Yeah.
That is your goal, to contact 100 of them. So you need to contact a college 1 out of every 3 days, and you will reach your goal. Simple as that.
So as somebody that's figured that out, why is that so hard for everyone?
It's not easy for me either. Sometimes you wake up and you just don't want to do things. Sometimes you wake up and it's funny because I say this as someone who hates working out and rarely does it, but a great metaphor is the second you put on your sneakers to go to the gym, you're on your way to the gym.
Right.
And so, like, okay, just, finishing the last draft of my book, for 2 weeks, I was like, I'm going to work on it today, and then I didn't. And then finally I opened the file one day, and for 8 hours that day, I was like, and I was excited to work on it because I had started to. And so I think, one of the things that makes it difficult is work ethic is a very tough thing. And to have to work constantly. And so for me, it's find what you enjoy about the work. I don't like emailing people back and forth about the business of things. I wish it was just done for me.
Yeah.
But I love the results. And so when you think about it as like, this allows me to get the results, then you can excite yourself. And whatever some people love behind the scenes, some people love, whatever it is that people enjoy, just find what it is you like about that and lean into that.
Do you manage yourself? Or some of this makes it sound...
So I have a manager. I have a couple agents for different things. I have literary, I have college, I have theatrical. But at the same time, I've always been hands-on. And until 2 years ago, I didn't have anyone except for my college agent. Actually, less than that, I think, until like a year and a half ago. And so I was always doing stuff on my own. And even now, I still do a lot of the communication because I'm just so used to that. And also I'm a producer as well. I produce television and film and things like that. So there are some things as a businessman I do have to do. But yeah, I've always been very hands-on just because I don't always trust other people. And I'm trying to learn how to give up that control and put it in someone else's hands, but that's a tough thing for me to do.
I imagine, especially, when you started out a certain way and it got you to a certain point. And
Yeah.
I think what I've learned, observing successful people is that there's the right balance to that, right? That when we hang on to the things that have worked in the past too much,
Yeah.
then they become our obstacles moving forward. At the same time, you have to honor some of that, right? And I think there's, especially in creative people, and there's been this expectation that's maybe changing to some extent, but that I'm going to let the manager handle that, or the agent, or the producer,
Yeah.
or the record label, or the whoever, right? And I just focus on making my art. And I don't think that's really true either. I think
You have to do a little of both. One thing I don't know if I'll ever give up handling is my own travel,
yeah,
because I know what I'm willing to deal with.
yeah,
Like the idea, I did it once. I hired someone who was doing that stuff,
yeah,
and she had me on this 6 a.m. flight because it saved $15.
right,
And I was like, look, the cheapest flight, great idea,
yeah,
but
yeah,
if it's 3 hours later for $15, I'm pretty sure I'd pay $5 an hour to sleep in a little bit.
right,
And so there's, to know the balance that I'm willing to deal with
Sure.
is a tough thing.
yeah,
So there are elements that I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever give this up. But you do, I edit my own videos, for instance. And there's part of me that wants to just hire someone to do that. And then I'm like, oh, but the creative art and what I want to put out there might be a little different than what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you think about it and you go, yeah, but the time you save, you can do other good things.
right,
So anything you lose on that, you'll gain on something else.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to give it up.
yeah. I think that's another thing that's really hard for creative people, is we have this sort of, I guess we call it perfectionism, right? But it's really about you've got this vision, and I think it's really hard for people to separate what's essential to that vision and what's maybe more peripheral.
Yeah, and also have to be able to find someone who can understand your vision and who can bring their own creativity to it, but who can still understand your vision.
So are you a good collaborator, and what do you do to be a good collaborator?
It's a good question. I take other people's suggestions. If there's a good suggestion, I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it comes from, someone coming up to me after a show and be like, hey, here's an idea, or it comes from a close friend who knows my stuff well. If there's a good suggestion, there's a good suggestion. Mm-hmm. I don't fight for something just because it's my idea. I want it to be the best.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is with editing the video, that's not a collaboration. That's literally, I would give it to someone and be like, make it good.
Yeah.
And then it would come back to me. And so if it's a collaboration, you're spending just as much time as you would if you just be like, I'll just do it, Mm-hmm. Would I like help on it? Absolutely. But if I'm paying for someone to help on it and I'm also spending the time, that's not what I need right now.
Yeah.
What I need right now is for someone to take some stuff off my plate.
Yeah.
When it comes to collaboration, I've co-written scripts with people.
Mm-hmm.
I produced a TV show for Fox where
that was Laughs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was EP, and then my producer, I handed it to him, and I liked a lot of his ideas. And what I would do is every first cut was his. Mm-hmm. And every now and then I would be like, move this here and change this. But 90% of it was his vision because he was good at it. Mm-hmm. And so I stepped back and I let him do it.
Yeah.
But I let him do the job I hired him for.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why hire him?
That's so hard for so many people. It's you just see people doing the work of people that they've hired.
Yeah, but if someone's good at it, it's funny. It's I don't know which is more difficult, to have a boss or to have a staff.
Right.
Because if you have a boss, you have to play to someone else's agenda. If you have a staff, you have to be willing to let them do their thing. So it's difficult to have both.
Absolutely. Is there one? Obviously you have success happening in so many areas: writing, producing, comedy. Do you let any of those go at a certain point, or is
no?
No.
I'm gonna do stand up till I die. Actually, when I can't do stand up anymore is when I want to die.
Yeah.
If I ever got to the point where I wasn't there anymore, I wasn't there enough to do stand up, that'd be it.
Yeah.
Pull the plug.
Yeah.
Or if I'm not on life support, do something that would make me on life support and then pull the plug.
Okay.
But I think I love creating something out of nothing. It's part of, one of my hobbies is woodwork. I love, and nothing intricate. I just like building, I built my dining room table.
Ashtrays?
No. A wooden ashtray, it's a terrible idea. So...
It's like flame retardant.
yeah, it's still,
coating
you
you can put on.
probably go ceramic
I don't
on
know.
that.
What did we make at wood shop?
Well, I built my dining room table.
Oh, wow.
I built a thin TV cabinet.
Oh, cool.
Just stuff like that, useful stuff around the house.
Yeah.
I built my ex-girlfriend a coffee table that turns into a dining room table because she had a
nice.
studio apartment, and so she was deciding between the two, and I was like, why don't I make a transformer?
Wow.
And
so you're actually good at that.
I'm decent.
Yeah.
I'm passable.
Uh-huh.
And so, but the reason I love it is because it's building something that didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's taking something, it's taking a pile of wood and turning it into a piece of furniture, and it's something useful.
Yeah.
But also because it's done, and unlike comedy, unlike any of the art that I do,
Right.
it's never
never
done.
Yeah.
And so what I loved about it was that and they're always toward the end, there are always a ton of little tweaks about I should put, I gotta make sure the legs lock so that it doesn't tip, and all those little things. But once I did that, I was kind of like, all right, I can't think of anything else to do to it, so now it's done.
That's great.
Yeah, and and I like that. And it's similar with whether it's a movie or a TV show or a piece of stand-up, being able to just create something out of thin air is what I love.
Is that important to have, you've got this woodworking hobby, right? To have something in your life that's totally unrelated
I think so.
to your work?
I think so. I think it's, and even though it's not something I do often, I think it's nice that I can just disappear into the garage for 8 hours and, come out with a table and feel good about it.
Yeah.
And feel a sense of accomplishment that's not tied into my career. Because and especially with social media now, that high you get when you get the new notifications, when you get the, being able to not have to rely on that to feel good about yourself is, I think, very important for anyone. And so whatever someone's career is, being able to have an outlet that has nothing to do with their career, whether it is building something, collecting something, playing a sport, whatever it is, something that is completely unrelated that also gives you joy is important.
So heavy drinking.
Yeah, heavy drinking, I think. Look, if you can be the best at something.
You mentioned social media, and I know that's something you're really good at. And
Thank you.
And your YouTube, I think I saw it's over 50 million views.
It's 75 now.
Nice. So what should other comedians learn from you about YouTube and social media in general?
First of all, content is king, and it always will be. The reason my YouTube worked is because I had a video go very viral, but I already had another 500 videos up there.
Right.
So when that went very viral, it wasn't a flash in the pan. It was people were like, oh, let's look at what else he's doing. Also, and this is another thing, the untrained eye might see, oh, it's self-promotion, it's self-promotion, it's self-promotion. But if you look carefully at my strategy, it's not intrusive.
What do you mean?
I do not ever share a link somewhere it should not be shared. I will never post a video on someone else's Facebook wall. I will never approach a celebrity I've never met and be like, can you share this?
Right.
I'll never do that.
Yeah.
Because to me, that is the equivalent of putting a poster for your show on someone else's front door. It is obnoxious, and it's a waste of time. It won't work. People like when it's organic. And so, will I share a video to the appropriate Reddit community? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I have no shame about, sharing my own stuff? I have none at all. You are your own best mouthpiece. But you have to be thoughtful about how you do it. I will not add someone on my email list who did not ask to be there. They may have been drunk and forget that they asked to have been there. But I will not be intrusive with my promotion. And I think that's very important. Oh, and content 90% of the time, promotion 10% of the time.
Yeah. Is that you use the word strategy, so
Yeah.
like, did you spend time sort of developing a strategy? Was there a moment where you're like, I got to figure this out, or did it? Are you looking
Just
in the
all
rearview?
organically.
Yeah.
Just, as it happened, as I learned. One of the big things that went viral for me early was MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see all these people, adding people on MySpace and just be like, sending just disingenuous messages. I saw, from the music in your profile that you might like our band. Be like, really? I don't mention music in my profile, you fucking dick. You didn't need to say that. You didn't need to lie.
Right.
You could. And so what I would do is when I would add people, I would just send them a message that was just like, hey, I'm a stand-up comic. This is what I do. If you are inclined, I'd love for you to check out my video. And if not, no worries.
Mm-hmm.
No harm done.
Yeah.
You come off polite. You come off humble. You come off, as a person, as a human,
Mm-hmm.
who's just doing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I learned from watching other people fail how to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm like, you come off humble, but like, oh, I'm a success. But the idea is that you need to be a human being first,
Yeah.
and a promoter and artist second.
Mm-hmm. I have a little lightning round I want to get to.
Yeah,
before
sure.
we wrap up, but is there one? I mean, you've talked about I can see a roadmap as you're talking, right? Is there one decision you think that's had the biggest impact in your career path?
Yeah, but it was an accident.
What's the best?
It was there was a series of decisions. So, Justine, who's a, well-known vlogger and personality. So when she was in college and I was a first-year comic, we dated briefly before either of us were doing anything.
Yeah.
And she thought it would be funny. This is before anyone was on any social media. And she thought it would be funny. So this was 2004, I think. She thought it would be funny. She made me a MySpace profile. And she made Ashton Kutcher a MySpace profile.
Okay.
And she had them comment on each other's profiles, as this was to make me laugh.
Yeah.
And she did it really well. It was like, he was like, hey, Broheim, I hate that I missed your show in LA. I'm so sorry. Next time you're through, you got to hit me up. And I was like, no worries, man. I know you were out of town this week. Come back in a couple months. We'll hang then. All of a sudden, all these teenage girls were like, Ashton Kutcher, this is amazing. It's not like they were just searching for Ashton Kutcher. They would find the profile, and then they would find me. And so I realized the power of social media from that. So when Facebook hit, it was Christmas Eve 2004. I'm Jewish, so I was bored. And I had shows upcoming at University of Florida and Muhlenberg, and they were both just added to the Facebook platform. This was when it was just a couple schools. Mm-hmm. So I started just randomly adding people at those two schools, and all of a sudden they were adding me back. And I not just them, but their friends. And I was like, oh, shit. And so I launched this, and this was the idea that changed everything. I launched a quest for 10,000 friends as a joke.
Yeah.
And it was this social experiment of what does the word friend really mean? Mm-hmm. I thought it was funny. I thought it was interesting. It's a way to get people at shows. It was a combination of all of that. And within 2 weeks, I had, I think, 15,000. And so then I was writing for College Humor at the time, which gave me this platform. And so I created a quest for 100,000 friends. And I ended up with 200,000. It became this crazy cultish thing.
Nice.
This is before anyone is mass friending. And so I actually still have the record for Facebook friends because they have that 5,000 limit. Mm-hmm. So to this day, no one has gotten more than 100,000. I got 200. And every now and then there'll be a random article in some random language that'll mention that, and I'll get all these messages from people in languages I can't speak.
Right. Helpful.
But that Christmas Eve. And look, I've done a lot of little things that have led to other things. Sure. Putting the videos up on YouTube, that zany friend quest changed so much. And the way my friends described me in college was, so I was president of my fraternity, and we would have these executive board meetings. And the running joke was every meeting I had 100 ideas, and 99 of them were so fucking dumb. But one was brilliant. And their job as an executive board was to figure out which one the brilliant one was.
Yeah.
And I have done I had so many ideas for promotion that failed miserably. My favorite one that failed was, you ever go to a restaurant and you see headshots up of people you've never heard of?
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no way
Right.
someone, because I've looked up some of these people and it's like, oh, they were not on nothing. There's no way they came in and the waiter was like, oh my God,
Totally.
it's the extra from Falcon Crest. And so I got this idea of like, maybe I could just send some. And this is literally before I've done any television, before anything. And I tried it as an experiment in Bloomington, Indiana, because I had played a club there a lot. And I sent to like 20 different restaurants with a letter saying like, pretending to be my agent.
Right.
Saying like, oh, Steve Hofstetter had a wonderful time last time he was in Bloomington performing at Bear's Place. He ate at your restaurant.
Yeah.
And, we just wanted to send you this as a thank you. And
That's great.
one Chinese restaurant put it up. And all the others just threw it out and ignored it. And that one just, and maybe it could work now because I actually have a decent profile.
Sure.
But just the idea of, I thought, this is such a great idea. And I was like, no, that cost me like $40 in postage and prints and all that stuff.
Sure,
so, it didn't work. But on the surface, you go, what a brilliant, no, that's fucking dumb.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to try that stuff.
Exactly.
To figure it out.
My career is littered with the carcasses of ideas.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's important. What I take from what you're saying is date an internet celebrity. Absolutely. If you're listening
She wasn't
out
famous
there,
then. She wasn't famous.
But you had the foresight.
We broke up long before she was
really?
famous.
All
Yeah,
right.
we went out for like a month or two. We're still friends.
Yeah.
I'm mentioned in her book.
Oh, nice.
Because she tells that story, the whole Ashton Kutcher thing, because it was
That's a
like
great
her
story.
early days of the internet before she blew up on that.
Yeah.
And what's funny also is, and I'd say this is important right now. Some of the people listening to this are like, oh, that's great, and I'm gonna check out all this stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the people listening to this are like, that pretentious piece of shit, I hate him so much.
Yeah.
Because not everyone likes everything.
Sure.
And letting go of the idea that they're all going to like me is very important in whatever you do. Understanding that Jay Black described me once as binary, which I loved that description because people either get it or they don't.
Sure.
And being okay with the fact that the vast majority of the world is going to look at me and be like, I hate that fuck. And that's fine because there are 7 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And
there's
you
also
don't need a lot of them.
There's also, I always think back to that that scene in Private Parts, Howard Stern movie, where they were like, people that love him listen for 30 minutes and the people that hate him listen for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, not that I wouldn't call you like a shock.
Well, the people who hate me don't listen at all, in my case.
Sure. But maybe, but they made comments and posts and like...
There's definitely some, but I also try to foster a culture on my YouTube of the assholes get shouted down.
Yeah.
And so when someone's being a dick, the rest of the community, like if you see the like ratios on my video, it's off the charts. It's like 98%.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because when someone's being a dick, they're quickly not welcome.
Right.
And
because you've created a community.
Yeah,
right,
and if they're being a dick to each other, I will ban them.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's not about being nice to me, it's about being a gracious person.
Absolutely.
And so there are people like I'll do some big podcasts sometimes. And like I just did one called Drunken Peasants.
Okay.
And
Drunken Peasants?
Drunken Peasants.
Oh, cool.
And it's funny because on that one, the ratio was interesting because it was like maybe 80 to 90% of the comments were fucking vile. Were like anti-Semitic and just awful shit.
Yeah.
But I don't care because the 10 to 20% that liked me are now fans and they're with me and they're watching my stuff and they'll be with me going forward. And so I don't care if the majority of people are not into what I'm doing, because that's okay, because comedy is subjective and everything is about taste, and I'm fine with that. You know what? I don't mind that, like, Michael Bolton had a ton of fans when I didn't enjoy his stuff. I wasn't sitting there going, why the fuck you listening to Michael Bolton? Yeah, so, you know, I was fine with it. And I'm fine that it's the same way with anybody. And there will be someone at your office who hates you when you've done nothing to them. And
that's James.
I was thinking I didn't want to say him by name. But and you let it go, and you move on, and you're okay. You have your crew, and you have the people who understand and appreciate. As long as some of the best advice I ever got was lead a good life, so when you look back on it, you enjoy it a second time. And as long as you can do that, as long as you can sit there and be like, I'm happy with the decisions I made. I've made mistakes, but they led me to where I am, and I haven't tried to hurt anybody. I've accidentally hurt some people, but, you know, I haven't tried to actively, you know, do anything wrong, and I'm okay with that, and let the rest go.
Yeah. That's good. That's good wisdom, which brings us to our...
Well, to that, by the way, someone's going to comment that I'm a beta cuck, just so you know. So
that's all right. Fuck that guy.
I love people who use uncreative insults, because it tells them so much. It tells me so much more about them than it does about me.
Absolutely. Okay. What's something you used to believe and then decided that you'd been wrong?
No sex without love.
Nice.
Well, I learned that, you know, love is rare and sex is great.
Yeah.
So not everything needs to be an after-school special.
That's a good one. What talent have you always wished you had more of?
Singing. I can't sing.
Okay.
I can't sing. And it's just...
Have you tried in front of people, like on stage?
Oh, no. God, no. I also hate comics who are just like, let me just throw a little song into my act. Yeah. You know, it's just, fuck you. You're not...
I hate musicals for that reason.
Yes. The idea that it's so weird.
Yeah.
When people
like we're just having
singing,
a conversation and then one of us starts singing.
Yeah.
Like, no. That's...
Like, if someone did that in real life, that would be fun, to write a musical where when someone starts doing that, everyone else is just like, what are you... What are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop it. We always told you to stop. Stop showing off.
Right.
You lost an American Idol. Quit this shit. Yeah, but I would like to be able to do that just for, I mean, everything from singing someone happy birthday to karaoke to, you know, there are
happy
a lot of
birthday
times
is an
in
unfair
life.
song, though. Like, there is no one that sounds good singing that.
There's actually, especially the people who try to sound good, who try to overdo it, like the happy birthday. Like, that's crap. Yeah, it's not about you, it's their birthday.
So if you could choose another career, nothing to do with comedy, what would it be?
Does talent matter?
If you knew you couldn't fail.
If I knew I couldn't fail?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd pitch for the Mets.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
If I worked for you on your team or whatever, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
That's interesting. Because, I mean, there's definitely, like, isms that I have.
Give me one.
I mean, one, you know, find work you love, you never work another day in your life. That's one that I love.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about it, because it's one of these things that, like, I say them, and, like, as I'm saying it, I'm like, yeah, this is a thing I've said 1,000 times, but, like, I don't have stuff that I go to.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as a staff member, you would definitely hear me say thank you. Because that's the only way people are ever going to work for you is if they know that they're appreciated.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate, the work you did has been fantastic.
Who would you be most excited to learn is a fan of your work?
Oh, interesting.
I stole all these questions, by the way, from different podcasts mostly.
Well, yeah, as long as you don't give them any credit.
No, of course
that's the
not.
most important part.
No, they shouldn't have put it out there.
Yeah. Who? That is interesting, because on one hand, there's like, who am I a fan of? Like, it would be amazing to have like Jerry Seinfeld be a fan of mine, because I love what he does, and also, you talk about entree into whatever it is I'd want to do, but then it'd also be fun to see like how pervasive, like, wouldn't it be fun to find out that like Justin Trudeau was a huge fan?
Sure.
Because, like, I mean, I also, he seems like a good dude.
Yeah.
And then I could just perform in theaters in Canada whenever I wanted.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
This
Maybe
is about,
Obama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because especially with how hard I've gone after Trump on my Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Katrina Pearson, his former spokesperson,
Yeah.
she followed me on Twitter. When I found out, I made a whole, like, hashtag campaign to get her to unfollow me.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't unfollow me.
No
like,
way.
I tweeted all these jokes about him.
Yeah.
Where I said, like, I said, Donald Trump isn't fit to be president of a condo association. Like I said, when, if Trump were running against Palpatine, I'd vote Palpatine. Like, all kinds of, she didn't unfollow me. And then finally, I realized, like, a year later, she was still following me. And so then I said that it was amazing that she did all that shilling and she didn't get hired in his administration, even though she's a partisan hack. And then she unfollowed me.
Nice.
It's like, found it. I found her weakness.
That's great. You mentioned Seinfeld, and so if you got the call to be on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee,
Yeah.
what kind of car would you be in?
I could choose any car. It's funny because the part of me that just wants to drive in a cool car,
Yeah.
maybe like an old Mustang.
Oh, nice.
But the part of me that is like a producer and director is like a giant SUV, so it's a better shot because you have more room in the shot,
Yeah.
So.
Well, what I've noticed on that, like, he tries to pick a car that he think reflects the guest in some way.
Okay. So, probably a Toyota Corolla,
Okay.
which is the
Awesome.
car I drive.
Awesome.
It's because it's not flashy and it's very reliable.
Sure.
And that's what a road comic needs.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite city to travel to? I know we just talked about travel a bit.
I had a ton of fun in Cape Town because comedy is new there.
Oh, yeah?
And yeah, I mean, they've only had democracy for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so
Free speech is kind of a precursor to comedy. Isn't
yeah,
it?
and the comedy scene there is about 5 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
And actually probably about 10 years old now. But what's amazing and so interesting, just I'm a fan of the game.
Yeah.
And there are two scenes that exist at the same time. It's basically comedy in the 80s in the States, which was that hacky, silly tie, sound effects, say anything for a laugh, because it's a brand new scene, and so sometimes people are doing anything they can to get a laugh. But also there are people there who are listening to podcasts and who are getting influenced by YouTube videos and seeing what comedy is globally now. And so this smart, intelligent, the wordsmith scene exists at the same time as the pratfall scene, which is so cool. It's just so interesting, and sometimes it'll be on the same show.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me as a fan of the art.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the last great book you read?
I have been reading, quote unquote, the audiobooks for Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
I'm a huge fan of the show, and I decided I would. And what's great is because I was like, oh, maybe I'll pass the time. I had these, like, last summer, I had these, like, incredibly long road trips. I was driving like 10 hours at a time. And I'm about to be done with book 3, and it's like a year and a half later since that started. But every time I'm driving, when I have a show in Long Beach, I'll drive down and listen to 45 minutes of it. And so it's, when I'm doing the dishes, I'll throw it on, and it's a great way to pass the time. And oh man, they're so much fun.
That's cool. What movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, no question. I know every line from that movie. Not only do I know every line from that movie, I can even do, and I don't do impressions, but I can even do, not only can I do the impression of Cameron doing the impression of Sloane Peterson's dad, but I can do the TV clean version of it while he mouths the actual words he said.
Yeah.
Because that's how many times I've seen it, and that's how many times I've done it.
It's great.
Like, I love that movie. I think one of the best ever written.
Yeah, me too. Last one. Favorite DJ or live show, music that you've ever seen?
So I'm not much of a live music person. I'm a big fan of things that are as good as they can be. And so the studio version of it, it's very rare that I've been to a couple concerts and I've never been like, oh, this one that I can't hear as well, where
Yeah.
he made a mistake on that one chord, and
Yeah.
and some asshole's next to me, yelling some drug-induced crazy shit. This is way better than just listening to the perfect version of it. Oh, this band that's brilliant musicians but aren't funny at all, trying to be funny in between songs. That makes this way better. So I prefer, and also to me, music is a personal thing. And so I like listening to music alone in my car, or maybe like with a friend being like, hey, I love this song and you should check this out. But to me, like, music with 10,000 strangers just sounds terrible.
I love that you said that, because honestly, I feel the same way. I'm a music guy. I've worked in music my whole life, and I have enjoyed many concerts.
Yeah.
But I strongly prefer not being at a concert to hear music.
And what's weird is that, like, comedy kind of has to be communal, and live shows are almost always better than the recorded version.
Right.
Because you're with a community and laughter is contagious.
Yeah.
And there's an element of that at concerts where you're with a bunch of people that appreciate it also, but like, there's also a lot of people who are just there to go, and who are like, I can't stand I can't stand people who, I'm fine, you want to take whatever substance you want, go for it.
Sure.
But if you think that inherently makes you cool, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of like, I'm cool because I did drugs. It's like, we all could.
Right.
These aren't, it's not hard to do.
Sure.
It's not hard. Like, look, I've never done cocaine.
Yeah.
I've never been next to someone doing cocaine. If I wanted to do cocaine today, I could figure out how to go get some. And so it doesn't make you cool just to have done. And there's an element of that at concerts that drives me up the fucking wall.
Yeah.
And also, like, if it's cold out, if it's, if there are other elements that make it unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Radiohead in Atlanta, and it was, it was Coldplay. I saw Coldplay in Atlanta, and it was like 45 degrees and rainy. Like, it was just one of these nights that it sucked. And, it's supposed to be nice. It was like the summer, and it just sucked. And I was like, I am enjoying this, but I don't know how long I can sit here.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't know how long I can just
I also love that you mixed up
outside.
Radiohead and Coldplay, because I hate them both.
Well, I've been to concerts I've seen both of them. I went
Okay.
to a music festival at Liberty Park in Jersey where Radiohead played.
Sure.
And it also depends on, like, the artist can be better live. Like,
Yeah.
I went to a couple concerts when I was an undergrad, and I saw, it was the weirdest split bill. It was Sonic Youth and Busta Rhymes.
Oh, okay.
And Sonic Youth was fucking awful.
Yeah.
It was like a little rainy,
Yeah.
and they were under a tent, and they were miserable. They were playing like, why do I have to be here?
Right.
And then
Busta Rhymes incredible, right?
Busta Rhymes gave such a performance and brought everybody back to life.
Yeah.
And it was just,
I've seen him do that.
Yeah, it was fun. I got to be on stage while he was doing it because I
Nice.
was crew, and so I had to mop the back of the stage.
Nice.
So I was like kind of dancing behind him like an idiot. I was 18. I didn't know any better.
Hopefully there's a video of that somewhere.
Oh God, I hope someone has that. That would be amazing.
No, that's cool. I'm so glad you answered that way. Thanks for doing this, man. That was so much fun.
Well, I appreciate it. This was a great time.
Yeah, it was awesome. How does everyone find you? And I know you have a book coming out. Anything else we should promote?
I have a 128 city tour next year.
Nice.
And that is before I've added the abroad stuff. So I'm going to also add Europe and Australia to that.
Wow.
And if they want to go get tickets, they can check out stevehofstetter.com, because wherever you live, I will be near you.
Cool.
So coming out to a show, and just Steve Hofstetter, even if you spell my last name wrong, Google will figure it out.
Sure.
And social media, YouTube, all that stuff.
Kill it. Awesome. Yo, that was Steve Hofstetter on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave us a review on iTunes, a comment on Twitter, Facebook. Check our YouTube page, Rebel Radio Net, for some video snippets of our interviews. And most importantly, come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.